In 2019, President Cyril Ramaphosa put the cost of corruption in South Africa at around 1 trillion rand. 3 years later, Ramaphosa outlined Cabinet's response to recommendations made by Justice Raymond Zondo. The Zondo Commission looked into allegations of state capture, corruption and fraud in the public sector. These crimes left a gaping hole in the public purse. Ramaphosa says during the years of state capture, state institutions were deliberately weakened by perpetrators of these acts.
The Commission's report notes that state capture was facilitated by a deliberate effort to subvert and weaken law enforcement and intelligence agencies so as to shield and sustain illicit activities, avoid accountability, and to disempower opponents.
The National Prosecuting Authority, tasked with dealing with this nature of crime, is one of the entities Ramaphosa referred to. But the National Director of Public Prosecutions, Shamila Batohi, says the tide is slowly starting to turn.
We are finally reaching solid ground. I think one of the indications that the NPA is beginning to, the wheels of justice are turning, is the increasing attacks that the NPA is facing, including comments like biased prosecutions. These are clear indication that those that fear accountability are trying to undermine the work of the NPA.
Professor Lucas Minting of the University of the Western Cape's Dalla Omar Institute has been engaged in researching the NPA. He says the NPA has made advances, but he says the critique expressed by ordinary people who deal with the justice system in regional and district courts is fair.
There's an increasing sense of frustration with the performance of the criminal justice system, and that can, to a very large part, be placed at the door of the National Prosecuting Authority. So yes, on the one hand, one has to acknowledge that there has been significant progress and advances made in respect of high-level cases.
Looking at the task ahead for the NPA and its resources and capacity, Minting says the number of prosecutors in the NPA has been on the decline, but he also says serious questions need to be asked about the competence of some prosecutors,
especially in the district and regional courts, to pursue especially corruption cases and slightly more complex cases involving financial crimes and organized crime and the more, not the run-of-the-mill stuff. And there may be some significant shortcomings. In other words, do prosecutors have the ability to take, for example, a forensic investigation from an auditing firm and translate that into a docket that can be placed before a court?
When presenting its 2021-2022 annual report to the Justice and Correctional Services Committee in October, Batohi said there was an improvement in the NPA's performance.
The steps and efforts that we are taking to rebuild the NPA to be a fit-for-purpose and future-proof NPA are indeed beginning to bear fruit.
She said budgetary advocacy has yielded results and expressed gratitude for additional funding provided for in the current medium-term expenditure framework period. But further budgeting is required, especially now that the Investigating Directorate will be established as a permanent unit within the NPA, as announced by the President. The ID's role is to prosecute state capture and other significant corruption cases. Ramaphosa said resources have been made available to capacitate law enforcement bodies, which would help them respond effectively to the findings of the Zondo report. However, the NPA is requesting a further 1.8 billion rand to enable it to fulfill its task. Minting also places emphasis on the independence of the NPA, saying no president or government by law can instruct the NDPP. He says because the NPA exists as a program within the Department of Justice, there is a risk of interference. He says this has already happened in the past and that political will is required to ensure the NPA operates in a truly independent fashion. Abra Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.